Thank you very much, Kyle. And can I say how wonderful it is to see all of you here today. Who would have thought so many people were interested in hearing about the budget? I hope you've done exactly what Kyle said, and of course that was to make sure you've been poring over the budget papers over the last week. Can I firstly acknowledge that we meet on the land of Aboriginal people and pay my respects to elders past and present. We're very fortunate in this country to have two of the world's oldest continuing living cultures in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, whose lands, winds and waters we all now share. I've been told to not do a series of acknowledgements because obviously we've done those already, but I will say thank you to CEDA for the ongoing invitation. To myself or whomever may be the Treasurer of Queensland, it's a very important forum and we greatly appreciate it. Of course, can I make a very special shout out? She's not here today, but I do want to acknowledge that it's my wife's birthday today. Such is the job that I flew out this morning from Far North Queensland at about 5:30, and hopefully I'll give her some presents tonight when I get home. It's also my son's birthday Thursday and I'm on the road, so you can just imagine how popular I am at home sometimes. Look, 6 days ago I handed down my third budget, the Palaszczuk Government's third budget, and it's a budget that delivers jobs for Queensland, and one that we hope will stimulate business and activity in infrastructure, programs and employment for years to come. Since coming to office in 2015, we've created 69,300 net new jobs. Now that's those jobs are created under our economic plan from the initiatives in the two budgets that I've delivered so far. What we've seen over that time has been strengthening economic growth. We've seen a string of surveys which point to a rise in business confidence. And the latest monthly business survey from one of the big four banks indicates Queensland businesses are the most confident in Australia. This increased confidence leads to new business investment, it leads to increased profitability, and it leads to the jobs that come with it. We've had very positive news from our credit rating agencies. We've seen our AA1 credit rating with Moody's affirmed, and we've moved from a negative outlook, which was applied in 2012, to a stable outlook. And our AA+ credit rating with Standard & Poor's Global has been affirmed as well. These decisions by ratings agencies who go through all of our economic and fiscal plans in great detail show that our economic and fiscal plan is working. We're expected to record a net operating surplus of $2.8 billion in 2016-17, continuing a run of surpluses under this government. This surplus is the highest in a decade. For the 2017-18 budget, the budget will remain in surplus, albeit dramatically reduced in terms of the impact of natural disasters. It is important to note, however, that both the 2015-16 and 16-17 budgets had already forecast surpluses before the spike in world coal prices and the flow of extra royalties to the government. Forecast surpluses across the forward estimates have been achieved through a measured, responsible approach to the state's finances. We've allowed the temporary boost from coal royalties to flow through to the budget position in 2016-17, and that's helped to reduce debt. And I'm pleased to say that our debt action plan is working. General government sector debt in 2017-18 is expected to be $14.7 billion lower than in the 2014-15 budget projection, the last under the previous government. Now, our diverse and resilient economy continues to grow and continues to head in the right direction. As you can see, the overall growth in Queensland's economy is forecast to strengthen from 2.4% in 2015-16 to 2.75% in both 2017 and 18 and improving through to 3% in 2018-19. The forecast would be higher if it weren't for the dramatic impact of severe tropical cyclone Debbie, which I'll discuss a little bit later. Many of you would be very aware that when it comes to looking at our domestic economy, state final demand is a very important measure because it excludes our trade performance, unlike our gross state product. Queensland has recorded 5 consecutive quarters of growth in state final demand after 8 consecutive negative quarters. We're recording positive annual growth in business investment after a sustained period of contraction. That was 12 consecutive quarters, following the unprecedented $60 billion investment in the LNG industry in Queensland. Now, growth in state final demand is expected to strengthen across the forward estimates, and as labour-intensive domestic activity strengthens, so too will employment growth. Now, we in Queensland are a trading state as part of a trading nation, so world markets are vital to our economy. We must earn our living in the global marketplace, so we maintain our export base and of course we seek out new opportunities to expand it. Overseas exports are expected to grow between 3% and 4% each year over the forecast forward estimates period. Boosted by a surge in coal prices and the ramp up in LNG, the value of our overseas goods exports totalled $61.1 billion over the year to April 2017. That's well over $1 billion a week and well the best year we've actually seen on record. In addition to exports from traditional resources and agricultural sectors, growth in services exports such as tourism and education continue to be supported by a lower Australian dollar and rising demand throughout Asia. Now here's a slide that's always important to look at: how much we're taxing you. A comparison of state taxes highlights Queensland's advantage as a place to live and operate a business. This is an advertisement for people not in this room, but for those of you who may be wishing to come to Queensland. The state budget shows that our tax per capita in Queensland is forecast to be $2,691 in 2017-18, compared with an average of other states and territories of $3,534. That's $843 per person lower than the average of all other states. A contributor to this competitiveness is our lowest payroll tax rate in Australia and highest payroll tax threshold of any mainland state. Now, we did have a significant weather event. Severe tropical cyclone Debbie hit our economy hard, as well as hitting the budget hard. It's anticipated that Cyclone Debbie could shave around 3/4 of a percentage point off gross state product spread across this financial year and the next. There's also an estimated $1.1 billion impact on the budget's bottom line over the next 2 financial years. As you know, the state must carry those costs up front, and it may be a couple of years before we're reimbursed through national disaster funding arrangements with the federal government. Through continuing and new key initiatives, this budget is expected to support approximately 40,000 jobs, predominantly in the private sector, in 2017-18. At its heart is a $42.75 billion capital works program that's expected to support around 29,000 jobs in this next financial year alone. The budget provides additional funding for the Works for Queensland program to assist local governments in regional Queensland with job-creating maintenance and minor infrastructure works, a total contribution now of over $400 million, and applications open today. There's also funding for the highly successful Back to Work program into regional Queensland and additional funds to extend this into the southeast corner. So far, more than 4,800 job seekers have been directly employed across regional Queensland as a direct result of this Back to Work initiative since July last year, and there's more than 800 applications currently in tow, ready to be assessed. This includes more than 2,500 young job seekers aged between 15 and 24, and they've been employed directly under the Back to Work Youth Boost. Now, the Back to Work Youth Boost, as well as the boost for long-term unemployed people, has been extended to southeast Queensland. So that means that there is an opportunity for direct incentives for your businesses to hire people. Particularly, we're focusing on those young people. We all know, whether we're a grandparent or a father or an uncle or an auntie or just someone who's interested in the community, if we don't get our young people off to a good start, we know just how detrimental that can be to them, but of course more importantly to our local economies. There are additional programs that we've been running, of course. Those include our Building Our Regions program, our Regional Jobs and Growth Fund, and these have been about attracting new industries, business expansions, growth and new jobs. Now, one of the big ticket items in the budget was a fantastic announcement around Cross River Rail. And we'd seen the federal government ignore Queenslanders and ignore funding requirements for what has been very clearly articulated as our state's #1 infrastructure priority project. But this is more than just a public transport rail infrastructure project. This is a city shaping, in fact it's an economy shaping project, which is going to be vitally important to what happens here in southeast Queensland. There were lots of infrastructure projects mentioned in the Federal Treasurer's budget speech in May, but many of them had dollars attached outside the forward estimates. I'm very proud to say that our budget puts real dollars against real projects in the forward estimates. It shows that we're fully committed to Cross River Rail, and the project's total capital cost is forecast to be $5.4 billion. To get this project off the drawing board and to get it into reality, it's going to support thousands of direct and indirect jobs. We're committing another $1.9 billion over the forward estimates. That's in addition to the $850 million that I allocated in last year's budget. Further funding will be allocated in the forward estimates, beyond the forward estimates, but of course, what this does is bring certainty to southeast Queensland, it brings certainty to this project. and it was going to inspire new investment, not only here in the southeast, but right across Queensland. On the back of the Queen's Wharf development, we're going to see obviously a great guaranteed pipeline of construction work. It's going to have potentially 5 to 7 years worth of work for people in that space. And again, it's going to bring on other projects. In terms of regional infrastructure, in 2017-18, our capital program overall in Queensland is just over $10 billion. As I said earlier, it's supporting around 29,000 jobs. There's $4.8 billion of that invested in infrastructure across regional parts of the state. That includes Mackay, Western Queensland, Wide Bay, Central Queensland, Far North Queensland, the Darling Downs and Townsville. And that's directly supporting around 14,500 jobs. It's good news for job seekers, it's good news for contractors, good news for families, small businesses. And when you look at the list of projects, there really is a significant project or initiative that will actually help those regional centres. Very important to talk briefly about Townsville. Townsville is a big winner in this budget, but it's because, like all of the other parts of regional Queensland, there's been a significant gap there. A gap of no funding or limited funding from the state. Of course, you throw on top of that more than 800 people leaving work through the closure of the Yabula nickel refinery. And of course, it meant a gap that was there, that came along before we were in government, that we've tried to fill post-haste. That's why programs like Back to Work have been so important. And when these announcements come through, or these initiatives come through that we've put into this budget, we'll actually see an enormous level of activity happening in Townsville, and of course, as you can see, in those other centres right across the state. So in terms of industry attraction and investment, our increased investment in Advanced Queensland, which has been a signature program for the state, we're positioning Queensland as the place to turn great ideas into reality, and we're fast becoming known as the startup state. That total commitment for Advanced Queensland is now $420 million. Our economic plan aims to create jobs now and jobs for the future by fostering innovation in new industries as well as our traditional sectors. I've said this before, innovation isn't just about lab coats and R&D. Of course, it's about process innovation. It's about ensuring that our traditional industry sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, resources, tourism, education, all of these traditional sectors that have held up and supported Queensland for so long have the opportunity to become new and, of course, reinvent themselves and to keep pace with what's happening with global trends. We're allocating $15 million to develop 10-year priority industry roadmaps and action plans to support emerging and priority sectors, and this really is about maximising their innovation potential. We've had venture capital return to Queensland, and of course we're seeing $10.9 million invested so far from our business development program. $10 million has been redirected to successful Ignite Ideas program, with more than $16.5 million invested to support around 118 innovative small firms across Queensland. Earlier this year, I was able to launch the $35 million trade and investment strategy for Queensland, and this has a specific focus on ensuring that local people, local businesses who thought exporting was out of their reach will have the hands-on, personal touch that's going to be allowing them to get all of the support they need to get into market. It's been something that's been missing for a long time, and the strategy, working in partnership with the Local Government Association of Queensland, where we've signed a statement of intent for an MOU, we believe we've got a great opportunity, particularly in regional parts of the state, to drive the next wave of export growth. The recently launched new investment prospectus in Queensland, Endless Opportunities, highlights the state as an outstanding investment destination. As a government, we have to ensure that we make the most of those opportunities for all Queenslanders. And that's why we're progressing with a targeted Move to Queensland campaign, which will be announced in the weeks ahead. Now, something that is, of course, very important is the debate around energy. It may be the single most important debate that all of us can be involved in right now. That's not just from a household perspective, when you're seeing your power bill going up. It's not from a small business perspective where you're seeing the same. It's from an industry perspective where you have significant energy and high energy pricing and costs. So we know that the $1.16 billion Powering Queensland plan is nation leading. It is nation leading and it is comprehensive. It ensures that we have a roadmap that we will be able to go forward with confidence in the future. And it's going to be setting the pace, we believe, for the national debate that we will see following the announcement of the Finkel Review. As part of this, we're funding Powering North Queensland through the dividends of our government-owned corporations. Those are those same government-owned corporations we've kept in public hands. We're seeing an unprecedented level of renewable energy investment in North Queensland, worth around $1.6 billion, supporting more than 1,400 jobs. We believe that Queensland is leading that national debate. We're not only taking steps to ensure that we can put downward pressure on those parts of the energy market that we can, but we're also going to be pressuring the federal government to undertake the necessary reform to the national electricity market. Queensland as a state has abundant resources, abundant natural resources and of course abundant energy resources, and we stand ready to assist the national market with an affordable and robust energy supply both from traditional and renewable sectors. Now, no budget would be complete without looking towards health. This budget is a record spend in health in Queensland. It is a $16.6 billion health budget to fund our world-class health services, which we know are delivered by our first-rate and highly skilled workforce. This is a budget that invests in frontline services as Queenslanders should rightly expect. Of course, in the companion piece, you always have to have a very strong focus on education and training. This is a record education budget of $13.7 billion, which is going towards giving our kids the best opportunity they can to have the best education possible. And it gives teachers support to do what they do best, and that is teach. There is significant funding for school infrastructure projects, such as new classrooms and new halls. We're building 2 new high schools in inner-city Brisbane, the first since 1963. Since last year's budget, we've committed another $950 million towards school infrastructure. And this is in addition to the $1.1 billion committed to state and non-state school infrastructure and maintenance in prior budgets. And of course, with some of the tragic news that we've seen from London, and I understand there's been some news today of another tragic event. We all know just how important it is for our communities not just to feel safe, but to be safe. And the recent tragic events that we saw in London and Manchester have been, I guess, underlining the need to be as vigilant as possible and maintain a well-resourced and well-trained police service. This budget commits funding to construct a counter-terrorism and community safety training centre at Westgate. There's more funding for counter-terrorism officers and rapid action and patrol group officers. One of the centrepieces of this budget has been our investment in housing. Now, housing is much more than just a roof over somebody's head. It is something that gives great impetus to where they feel like they can go in their life. It gives great confidence and great self-esteem to go on and do many things. But, of course, at its heart, it is about helping to address supply issues and making home ownership more affordable, especially at a time when both ownership and rental affordability are major challenges. It can also stimulate activity in our building industry and related sectors. So to achieve this, we've launched the biggest commitment to housing in Queensland's recent history, a $1.8 billion Queensland housing strategy, constructing more than 5,500 homes, both in terms of social and affordable homes. Now, over the first 5 years of this strategy, we'll actually be putting out 3,000 new social and affordable homes, which will support around 600 jobs each year. And this is a nice extension to what we've already been doing with the First Homeowners Grant. In last year's budget, I announced a 12-month time-limited offer for a $20,000 First Homeowners Grant. We've extended that for 6 months through to the 31st of December this year. Now, this means that Queenslanders in their own homes and jobs, and of course, means more jobs in building. Now, the Advancing Small Business Strategy was launched last year and is continuing to create an environment for small businesses to flourish. We're supporting small and medium-sized enterprises through our EcoBiz program, a program we're delivering in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and Industry Queensland to help businesses reduce their costs and environmental footprint. More than 400 manufacturing businesses have registered with the Made in Queensland initiative, a $20 million fund to support those businesses who want to become more competitive by adopting new technologies and innovation. We'll be maintaining the lowest work cover premiums in Australia, and we'll be increasing an early payment discount from 3% to 5%, and we'll also be covering the cost of work cover premiums for apprentices. So, in short, businesses will pay no work cover premium on their apprentices they hire, and we think that that's going to be a fantastic incentive to get our apprenticeship numbers up. As I mentioned earlier, our state tax system remains highly competitive, and of course we're going to continue doubling our payroll tax rebate for apprentices and trainees hired from 25% to 50% in 2017-18. So I was asked to give a brief snapshot so I could sit and talk to Karina a little bit more detail. But this budget is a budget that is building on the success, we believe, of the last 2 budgets. Of course, it contains much more detail than time permits, so I will be pointing you to the Queensland Treasury website. You can go and have a look at that if you're keen to follow through. But in short, This budget is a budget that we believe is driving Queensland's economy. It's going to keep keeping our state moving in the right direction to the benefit of all Queenslanders. We've delivered budgets which, of course, have had responsible economic and fiscal growth, and that is the growth that Queensland needs right now. Government debt is lower, unemployment is lower, economic growth is higher, and business confidence is at one of its highest rates that we've seen in many a year. So, in short, confidence has made a comeback. This budget is all about building on momentum, and we believe it's going to do just that. It's all about jobs for Queensland, and I thank you very much for your time today.